Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to the final episode of OBR Weekly. My name is Barry McBride. I'm a web dork. That right over there, that's the legend, Mr. Freddie Greedham, who's been holding court in Berea at training camp for this last week, and that's what we want to talk about. How you doing, Fred?
You mean I've been living there?
Basically.
You keep emphasizing this is the last OBR Weekly. Either you're sentimental or you can't wait to get this over with.
Well, I'm very sentimental about this, of course. I mean, for 3-4 years now, we've been the rock of the OBR lineup. You know, we've been here and other shows have come and gone, but you and me, man, we've been hanging out here every Wednesday night talking Browns, and it's been a treat. But I guess I have to explain what the heck I'm talking about here. And what it is next week, Fred is going to be heading down to cover practice in Carolina. I have another obligation, so we're not doing a show next week. And the week after, we're going to start up a new show. Fred came to me with what I thought was a great idea for a new show, and it's going to feature Fred is going to be on it, so you're not going to miss seeing Fred once a week at least. I will not be on it, but I'll probably go on and do some other show in the near future. So, you know, we'll both be coming at you whether you want it or not via the OBR streaming network. Did I cover it okay, Fred?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it's like been at camp 7 days now. It seems like it's been 2 months. You know, it's like been hot. I mean, this is like late August. It's just been like 95 degrees. And even this morning, they had it in the morning. On the last Saturday was the morning. It was pretty pleasant. But, man, today it was hot in the morning. Glad we weren't in the afternoon, so that was a blessing. But, yeah, a lot happening, a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of ground to cover. That is not Barry McBride compatible weather out there. I would melt into a puddle of web dork if I was standing out there with you, man. I can't hack it. But anyhow, let's get on to some of the stuff that's happened during this very eventful week, the first week of training camp. And unfortunately, we have to start off with some bad news that everyone watching is already aware of, which is that MJ Emerson has been lost for a year, for the season at least, with a ruptured Achilles. And that's a significant blow to the team. Fortunately, we have Greg Newsome standing by, and we've got some other cornerbacks. We'll talk about that in a minute. But also to the player. I mean, Fred, this is a guy who sort of had a down year last year, wanted to bounce back. He's in a contract year. This has just got to be devastating for MJ Emerson, and we wish him all the best.
Well, as it would go, he was the player that spoke to us yesterday morning, and he was very excited, very upbeat about this season. He came right out and said he was disappointed in his play last year. He felt like his body wore down as the season went on, and so he rededicated to get himself, back to the fundamentals and everything that made him a great player. And he was very excited, all the way around, not only for himself, but mostly for the team and so forth. So, yeah, it is a big blow. Then less than like 2 hours later, he's right in front of me to my left, maybe 20 yards. It's 7-on-7. Joe Flacco looks to his right and throws the ball on the right side of the field. But in the corner of my eye, I saw a player go down, and it was Emerson. And I didn't see him, I don't know exactly what happened, but I believe it was non-contact. He was covering Deontay Johnson, and he just collapsed. And I'm not a doctor, but I thought pretty much the way he was acting that it was a ruptured Achilles. I had seen several players. I remember Jakeem Grant, the kick returner, was running a pass route all by himself. They were just throwing the bomb and he was just running and he just dropped like he got shot. When that thing goes, man, they just go down. I've seen it too many times. But unfortunately, it got real quiet real quick. The whole team was around him. And the thing is, you got 90 guys, you got 89 other guys, you got to get right back up and you get to practice. But he couldn't get up. They picked, the trainers and everybody there picked him up and put him on the cart. So you knew, I've seen people with knee injuries and you think, oh, they're done. But then you think, oh, it's just sprained. He'll be back in a couple weeks. But this didn't seem like a knee. So unfortunately, I was right. And he's going to miss the year. So when you're a cornerback, your speed is everything too. And, most with the medical now, it seems like guys are able to come back, but you lose anything. It's it's hard at that position, to be elite. And as you said, it was a contract year for him. So, it's now Greg Newsome. They're just very thin there. We talked about it all off season that, one of the steps I felt they needed to take was add depth at cornerback, especially with Newsome and Emerson coming off a down year, and you didn't know what you had with Cam Mitchell and Miles Harden.
Right.
Well, now we're going to see. Even though Harden's missed the last 2 days for personal reasons, Cam Mitchell is kind of like, ironically, I guess, after the injury to Emerson, near the end of practice, he stepped in front of a Dylan Gabriel pass and intercepted it to prevent a touchdown. Was the only interception there that day. So hopefully he takes a leap. We're kind of the Browns are depending on the Northwestern guys. You got Greg Newsome and Cameron Mitchell. So, they're smart guys. Newsome today kind of said he's not worried about his contract. He's worried about, the team winning and playing well. He's going to get his wish. He's going to be the outside. It was kind of Emerson and him were alternating outside. And when they went to 3 corners, he moved into the slot. There's 3 receivers. So now I don't know, but I would think he'd stay outside and Mitchell, or Harden or one of the safeties or somebody will move inside.
Yeah. Well, Travis Hunter would have looked a lot better now, but they did get a haul in the draft, so we have to wait a couple of years to really judge that one. But, in addition to Mitchell and Miles Harden, they've got a couple of safeties. They've got Nick Needham as well, who have played corner. Do you think there's any possibility of KZ or Jenkins moving from the safety to a slot?
Yeah, they're doing some of that. He had 3 safeties out on the field a lot today, and he had, who was it? I thought it was Chris Edmonds, the undrafted rookie free agent, was getting some of those reps with 3 of them, and I think he was kind of moved into the slot, at least on a play or 2 I saw. Needham was signed as a free agent from the Dolphins. He was a cornerback. That was what he was listed as.
Right.
Training camp, and since he's been with the Browns on their roster, they had him listed as a safety.
Right.
Because I remember that. If you remember that deflected pass in, I think, OTAs or minicamp, got a lot of run. Shadur Sanders threw. It got batted up in the air. It was Needham who intercepted that and returned it for a touchdown. I think that he definitely, Stefanski said that they'd take a look at him. He was a slot corner, so there's a veteran guy with some experience. So yeah, they're gonna. Stefanski basically said they're gotta look at a lot of different things. There's a guy, he was on the practice squad last year. It's hard to pronounce his name, Chigozie Anasium.
Right.
He's from Colorado State. He's actually been in the NFL a couple years. Hasn't really played much, but he was on the practice squad last year, so he's a candidate. I think Anthony Kendo from Baldwin Wallace got hurt today. He was out there covering with Newsome, or not Newsome, with who was the one covering? Kazee, the guy you mentioned, on a deep ball that Gabriel threw to Caden Davis right between the two of them and for a touchdown. So I think they're going to look at them all and they're going to just rotate around and see what their best combination is. Because as I asked Stefanski today, I said, you always talk about the next man up, but how hard is this? You guys went into this, you haven't even got to the season, and 3 of your defensive starters are gone or out.
Right.
JOK they knew about relatively early, but Jordan Hicks retired a week ago, and Emerson goes down yesterday. Those were 3 starters. You got Schlesinger, you figured would start for JOK or being there, but you didn't really address cornerback in the offseason. And, linebacker, they didn't do a lot with that either. So, other than Schlesinger. So, yeah, it starts you in a hole. The only silver lining is you get the whole training camp basically to adjust and look around, as you said, for veteran linebackers or veteran DBs. I mean, as I've said many times on this show, they have a list of these 30-something guys or late 20 guys that are out there at every position, and for whatever reason, analytics or whatever doesn't measure up, and they didn't want to give them big contracts. So then these guys are out there because they weren't willing to take a minimum veteran job and are waiting for an injury, unfortunately. And so I don't know how quickly they'll look. They'll probably look at the guys they have and then make decisions. I think they made a decision on Mike Woods today because he's missed 5 practices with a hand injury. Stefanski kept saying he's really close. He's going to be out there, but he wasn't. And guys like Caden Davis and Gage Lavardane, they're making plays. So that's moving him down the list and making him feel more comfortable and moving on from him. And he was a draft pick, Right. He was suspended. He brought back. He came off an Achilles, but Andrew Berry stayed with him. 2022 6th-round draft pick, but it was waived with an injury settlement. So those type things, they usually don't get claimed. So they would be open to bring him back, I'm sure, if they needed somewhere. But yeah, it's opening opportunities for young guys, but defense a little concerning, with already the depth being tested.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of slot corners who are out there. Like you said, most of them around the age of 30. An exception is Asante Samuel Jr., who had some injury issues. He's just 25, but the rest of them, like Mike Hill, Troy Hill, Isaiah Oliver, they're all late 20s, early 30s, and we're not given a new contract. We'll talk about linebackers here in a second. But, with regard to Michael Woods, I mean, he was around for a long time and very rarely ever played. I mean, why were the Browns interested in him so much?
Yeah, it just this affinity for draft picks. Last year, he was on the practice squad. I think, he was cut, brought back to practice squad, but then with all the injuries and the trade of Cooper and, he found a way on and got active for a couple games at the end of the year when Tillman went down. He didn't have a big production. I think he had 7-8 catches, but yeah, it's just it's kind of one thing about getting drafted by Andrew Berry. You just get multiple chances,
Yeah.
You look at Anthony Schwartz, most of us said, boy, this guy couldn't catch a cold. And they kept bringing him back, trying to work him in.
Yeah. Yeah. So he does love his own draft picks. It's not uncommon among GMs around the league. But yeah, Michael Wood's got a lot of rope there. Let's talk about another news item. Again, you referenced it already. That's the retirement of Jordan Hicks. The Browns don't seem to be panicking about the situation, and they're moving right on to Carson Schlesinger. I guess the question I have, Fred, in your history watching this team, have you ever seen a rookie take the green dot, this early on, like Schlesinger has?
Well, I don't know how many years they've had the electronic in the helmet, for the linebackers, but I don't know if I've seen that with the Browns. But even before, it's how highly they think of this guy. They think about, no matter what you want to say, they target him big time to get him with the first pick in the second round. The last 3 NFL drafts, the 33rd pick, the first pick of the second round, had been traded because what happened, those other 31 teams look and say, there is a guy we have to have, and they go up to get him, in a trade. And I don't know how many offers. I have to think Andrew Berry got offers, and they just stayed there and took him. And as I remember, the linebackers, there was only like 2 really rated high, and one was taken, I think, middle of the first round, and then Schlesinger. And I really like this guy. I watched him, today. He's out in the middle of the field. He's just, the other day, he knocked Sampson down with basically with a shoulder in the first day of pads. Sampson went flying. They were a rousing cheer. I think he's that blue collar mentality. I think he's going to be a favorite here in Cleveland. I said it a few times. I'm going to probably write something about it, that he does remind me of Clay Matthews from the aspect, just a little bit, kind of a little brash, a little cocky, but also seeming very sincere. He talked to the media today. He loved live session tackling. That was the first time I've seen tackling live under Stefanski. And they were hitting him, and he was right in the middle of it. And so I think that he's poised, behind Collins and Graham in the middle. He just seemed, he was called a tackling machine. So I really think, he could do that. I'm anxious to see him play in the preseason and see what he has to offer.
Right. Yeah, a very bright kid as well, very smart, and appears to have the confidence of the Browns front office and coaching.
Throw
staff
that baby
already.
in the water in the deep end, they learn to swim right away. So that they don't have a lot of room. I mean, you got to also think at linebacker, Devin Bush. I have to think he might get suspended for a game or 2 or something, or maybe more, with a domestic violence case pending. So, yeah, I'm not so sure. But I think Schlesinger, is ready or not, here he comes. He's going to be out there.
All right. Well, let's move on to the quarterback situation. We've already got a couple of questions about it in the chat. Obviously, Kenny Pickett suffered a hamstring injury. Those are always tough to figure out when the player is going to be able to get back. And the rotation, since he's been gone, has been pretty solidly Flacco, Gabriel, and Sanders, although Shadur did get some reps against the first-team defense so far. Let's go to some of the questions in the chat room about quarterback. I am a guitar player, 22, says, when do you think the starting quarterback will be named after the preseason? Thanks, guys. Love the show. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, guitar player. When do you think that that starting QB was going to be named, Fred?
Well, knowing Kevin Stefanski, he doesn't really like to announce things, no matter, even obvious things. So for planning purposes for the Bengals or those, around, even if it is a secret, I don't think it'll be a secret, but I don't know if he'll announce it. I think we'll be able to tell, like right now, it's pretty clear cut that Flacco's the starter. Pickett's not out there. He's anything significant. He's taken the first reps, everything. Gabriel's getting a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but he's getting reps with the first team. And it's like they are force feeding him to get him ready. What I would think, not only for the Carolina game and the preseason game, but just throw a lot at him.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he made a couple plays today. I think he's improving. Sanders is moved up. When those two are pretty much working, alternating with the first team, he's getting reps with the second and third. Today, I thought the most significant thing for Sanders since he's been here is they put him in against the first team defense. That's Myles Garrett bearing down on him and Mason Graham. And he had two of three completions. He got rid of it quickly. They weren't long passes, just short little check downs, but I think he got his feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Stefanski was asked if that means because he hasn't really got any reps with the one offense, if that's not going to happen. Again, Stefanski didn't really answer. He just kind of did his, well, they're all rotating and we're going to keep rotating, evaluate. The thing with Pickett is, Stefanski said he expects him back here quickly. It's now been 2 days. They have an off day tomorrow. He said they evaluate every day. You would think if there was nothing to it, he would have been out there today. Usually, with a real mild hamstring type thing, you would think you wouldn't be out 2 days.
Right.
I mean, he practiced last Saturday. The last play of practice, I had it on video. I posted it on X. He rolled to his right and he threw to tight end Blake Whiteheart for a touchdown. Usually if a guy has a hamstring, they wince or pull up or something. I didn't see any of that. I went back and looked at the video. So that's like the last play of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere during then he felt something, or after practice said something. So we don't know the degree. I don't think it's too serious. But here's the question, okay? They're off tomorrow. Do you hold them out Friday and Saturday because then they're off again Sunday and go at it a fresh week with Monday and going to Carolina? Or do you shut him down for the rest of this week and then bring him back? Or how do you do it? Every day's out. I think it solidifies more and more Joe Flacco as the starter.
Sure. Right.
Because that's how these things go, but I would think, I could see him coming back Monday or not even come back Monday. But if he didn't come back by Monday, I don't see how you'd play him in the game. So a big part of his game's running. And he had a couple nice runs on last Saturday. One was like a 60-yard touchdown run, but you don't want him running.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think Pickett still has a shot? Or is Flacco really tightened his grip on the starting job?
This is just me. I don't think he has a shot, especially missing a few days, but anything can happen. The Browns, I think, want to keep this going as long as possible. You have to understand, as a business owner, I understand and you understand, you don't want to devalue an asset. You don't want to say, this guy's hurt, he's no good, this and that, because you might want to trade him. And right now you can't trade him. So the sooner he gets back out on the field, it's better for everybody. But I think, this is just, again, my opinion, I think Gabriel's closer to Pickett than Pickett is to Flacco.
Wow. Okay. We had a question about that from MC Lawrence, and sort of asking if you've seen enough to know how big a gap there was between Flacco and Pickett and the rookies. And it sounds like Dylan Gabriel is making a move from your perspective.
Well, they're giving him a lot of opportunities, I could have really seen them not even drafting Sanders and just be happy with these three quarterbacks. But the Sanders thing is where it opens it up to possibly moving on from Pickett. I've said this. Pickett and Flacco to me are placeholders. You really got to see, and Haslam alluded to it, what you have in the rookies this year to see what, when it comes to the draft, what direction you're going to go. Obviously, a lot's going to happen this season. But I really just don't know what, if Flacco would have been the one hurt and Pickett was doing all this, and you really got a good look at him, but I didn't really get a good look at him because with 4 quarterbacks out there, they're splitting so much time.
Right.
Now the coaches, Stefanski said it's the entire body of work. They saw him every day the whole off season. We only saw 1 day a week, like 1 day 5 times or something like that. So, yeah, it's hard to know. But I would just say right now, I already felt all along Flacco was going to start because you can't get around those first 6 games. How are you going to tell the players on this team that Joe Flacco doesn't give you the best chance to win?
Right.
The rookies are not ready to go, in my opinion. Flacco, if he struggles at all, they're getting Gabriel ready to take over at any point, and maybe the same thing with Pickett. Maybe they would keep him around as I asked Andrew Berry about keeping 4 quarterbacks. If they can't trade one of them, I can see him keeping all 4 at least to start, and then trying to, move on from, because you got to pay him anyway. So
is it
if they can trade him.
Is it too early to ask you to put a percentage on how likely you think it's going to be that they keep 4 quarterbacks? Is it 50-50 now, or you think that the odds are that they're going to keep them all?
I think the odds are they're going to keep them all.
Mm-hmm.
The caveat, I even wrote this a little bit ago, was unless they can trade Pickett. If Pickett if they can get an offer or get something for him, I see him trading him. Either right after the cuts, if the Browns keep him and somebody's interested, had their eye on him, and then they keep him on the roster, a team would give up a low pick just so they made sure they got him if they wanted him. A team like New Orleans or somebody that's kind of doesn't really have an established quarterback and aren't totally sold to turn it over to a rookie, or an injury takes place. So that's why, last year Tyler Huntley wasn't going to be on this team, and they kept him on the 53-man roster for a couple days. They tried to trade Winston and Huntley. They got no takers, so they cut Huntley. So I can see the same thing, although I don't see a market for Joe Flacco and in the trade side, but Pickett, $2.6 million contract, expiring contract. He's got some experience, has some upside. He's young. Same things the Browns like in him. So I really do. I think with the 69-man roster is the way you got to look at it. When you have 90 guys, you're trying to get to 53, it sounds like an army. But really, they only got to get to 69. Of course, you got to cut those guys, but then you bring them back. But you have 16 on your practice squad. That's like a AAA farm team. Yeah, and really now that you can have veterans, you put them on that, and you stack like the tight end position full of practice squad tight ends, or another position with guys that probably aren't going to get claimed. That's where the strategy comes in. You cut Pickett, he's claimed. You cut Sanders, Gabriel, they're claimed. So that might even be with Flacco. But as far as the practice squad, strategically, it did cost them last year. You remember they had Jalen Darden on the practice squad. He was their kick returner, punt returner. You can only bring him up 3 times, and they used it up, and they had to put him on waivers, and the Seahawks signed him, and he became a good punt returner with them. So, that's why, you keep guys on the practice squad to move around and try to figure it out, and then before you have to sign them.
I have one more question on the quarterbacks before we go to the chat room questions. And by the way, we've got hundreds of people watching this stream right now on X and Twitter, Zitter, whatever it is, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. If you have the opportunity, come and join us on either YouTube or Twitch and come into the chat room and zing us a question if you have a question. And at the very least, subscribe to the broadcast. We'd really appreciate it. So my last question on the quarterbacks before we go to the chat room is, at the risk of offending any Shedeur Sanders fans in the audience, and we know that they're out there, do you agree with team critics who think that Sanders should get some reps with the number one offense? Because Stefanski's taking a lot of grief about that right now.
I definitely do, especially now that with Pickett not out there with three guys, that, you know, even if it's just a few plays, I thought today was a nice step to get some film on him against Myles Garrett and all those guys bearing down. He threw a completion. Greg Newsome was covering the guy through to. I think it was Gage Lavardane. So, yeah, I think that he should. I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily going to cave to the questions from the media and so forth over and over about when you're going to get it. He didn't answer no, we're out of time. But I think he thinks it'll take care of itself somewhat in these upcoming practices with the Panthers and then the Eagles and the preseason games and so forth. Might not be with the ones in the games, but I do see a point in the practices, you know, where he'll do that. But I know everybody wants to overlook Gabriel, but they really like Gabriel. Yeah, and there's a reason why they took him in the third round. I was told Miami, you know, had their sights on him and they wouldn't have got him where they were thinking of getting him. So that's why they took him. Think about that. Miami's got Tua, who's been injured a lot, left-handed quarterback, not the biggest guy, and they saw him as a fit down there. So, you know, I think those guys are going to be on the team, Gabriel and Sanders. And so it doesn't all have to happen immediately. I've said it before. Right. Flacco is a placeholder. If they get off to a good start and they're able to win in some games, you know, and he's the quarterback, they'll keep it going. Same thing could be said if Pickett is. But if they struggle, and usually there's a point of that, there's some other guys. So what I think it comes down to, do they feel comfortable enough with Dillon Gabriel to be the backup quarterback? If they do, Sanders would be 3 or some order, 2, 3, either one of them, and move on from Pickett. If they choose the other way and move on from Flacco, I'd be surprised. But that means they really like Kenny Pickett. Yep.
We'll see how that all develops. We will report on it every day like everybody else in the media is doing. And we'll try to give you our honest takes on where that situation lies. Another guy who spoke to the media, Jimmy Haslam and E. Gillen, wants to know if you have any takeaways from Haslam's media availability. I have one. He said a lot of different things, but anything stand out to you, Fred?
No, I thought, you know, he always is pretty candid, you know, in those, you know, everybody used to make fun of him candidly. You know, he's always pretty straightforward and answers the questions, you know, the best he can. I thought one of the takeaways was he shot down the Shedeur Sanders. He said, if you'd have asked me Friday night, I said, we're not drafting him. And then Saturday morning, they came to him and basically, yeah, let's do it. He shot down several different things, but he said 99.9% they're going to build in Brook Park and get that started in early 26. As far as football, he's not happy with, obviously, with the off-field stuff, but did feel that he's realistically thinks or cautiously optimistic that Judkins will play for the Browns. So that doesn't mean they've made an edict that he's gone. They have to have learned more information. But a few other topics, can't remember them all right now, but that was to me, that he didn't insist on drafting Sanders, which I get that all the time, just like the Manziel with the homeless guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he made one little misstep, and that was when he said that, they had to certainly see Gabriel and Sanders at some point this year, because I think if Flacco starts off and the Browns surprise everybody and they start winning some games and they think they're in playoff contention, then you ride Flacco the whole season, regardless of whether you need to see those rookies. I know it's hard, but you see him in practice.
Yeah.
If you're in contention, you stick with the guy who's got you in contention, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good point that he did bring that up. He said that they've talked to Kevin. Kevin knows that. I don't know if he's putting a little pride, but like we said, they've started 9 different quarterbacks in the last 2 years. Odds are with a 40-year-old that he won't make 17 games. But if he does, that means things are going pretty well. But yeah, as we know here with the Browns, usually at some point you have time. Even if he missed a few games, they would get in there. To that point about Sanders getting first team reps, thing you have to look at, I went out and said they'll keep, probably 4 quarterbacks start with, but ultimately they'll be with 3. Sanders is going to get a lot of first team reps. I expect him to be the scout quarterback. And that's going against the first team defense. So during the regular season, he's going to get to look at Mason Graham and Schlesinger and Myles Garrett and Malik Collins a lot in practice. And that's where they're going to evaluate, because they can control things too. While they're looking and working on the defense, they can put in something that they really want to see to test Gabriel or Sanders or whoever's doing it. So I think he's going to get plenty of work. And I think that's one of the things that the coaches are going to, if things are going well, they know they have to kind of sprinkle in, this type of thing. Or the other thing, maybe they're doing well, but maybe the quarterback's not playing that well. They might, bring in a Gabriel and see what he can do on a series or something. If the defense is the reason they're winning games and it's the offense that's just not carrying their weight. But I agree. If they're winning, and I can't see them benching Flacco.
Right. Exactly. Question that we got in the chat. We've seen this question before, which is TD sort of saying, if they liked Gabriel, then why did they take Shadur? Was it just opportunity, Fred? Just an opportunistic, he's a value?
That's what Andrew Berry said. That's what they've said. And it's kind of like even with Sampson, they were only going to take running back. They took Judkins. It's probably a good thing they did now, but they're sitting there in the 4th round. And here's the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, rushed for 1,400 yards, led the SEC in rushing, led the SEC in touchdowns. He had 22, and led the SEC in carries, 258. You talk about a workhorse. There's your workhorse right there, even though he's a little smaller, 5'8", 200. So that's why they took him. They're sitting there. They look at the board. They always say they take the best on their board. He had to have been sticking out like a sore thumb, so they took him. Now they're probably glad they did. Sanders is sitting there, and they're like, okay, we really like him, but we just didn't like him in the 3rd round or whatever. It was a value pick. I think they put Gabriel in a tough spot from that aspect, because I saw some poll of the fans and it was like 50% wanted, or 45% wanted Flacco, 45% wanted Sanders, and like 4% wanted Pickett and or Gabriel. That doesn't add up to 100, but whatever it was overwhelming. So it's just like we're here. Everybody wants to know about Shadur, and I can tell you, I see a lot of talent in him, but I see a better arm. I see a lot of things in Gabriel. He gets he's much quicker in the pre-snap, getting rid of the ball and, and knowing where he's going. He's got that height thing. If he can figure that out, then he's going to have a chance to play. But I see him being around here a while. He might not be the starter in the long term, but Sanders is kind of going to get his chance. He's talked about he's just got to be ready for the opportunity. Yesterday he got an opportunity. He took a sack on the final play. He was in there,
Yeah.
Now that could have been the breakdown on the line or whatever, but I like both their progress. That's what a third and fifth round, or especially a fifth round, is a developmental pick, and when I ask Andrew Berry, if you heard the question, I said, do you see a path to keep 4 quarterbacks? He said, I do. And I said something to the effect of the 69. He said, well, we look at the last 5 spots on our roster as developmental players.
Right.
So what is that telling you? One of those quarterbacks I took is kind of where they have him as a developmental player.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking it's Shedeur Sanders.
Right. And that's the answer to your question, Ty Sox. Fred perceives that they are treating Sanders as a developmental quarterback.
So why does he need first team reps is what they're thinking now when you are trying to get ready for the season, and you're either going to go with one of the other 3.
Right. Interesting question from Gary. We've seen this before. This sort of question before, and it's a legitimate question, but I don't think the answer has really changed over the years. He says the national media is not impressed with our team, yet the local media is not calling it the same way. At what point will the local media start holding the coach and GM accountable? I think they're trying, Fred. They ask pointed questions. They're not getting in the coach's face or the GM's face. But if you want an answer, you have to ask a question they can answer and not just tell them that they're doing a crappy job. I mean, that's my perspective on it, at least. As a member of the local media, you try to call it like you see it. And, it's easy at the national level to just say, oh, they're going to repeat last crappy year. But good rookie class and all that sort of stuff. Got to hold out some hope, don't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, it can't be all gloom and doom before you kick off. I mean, there's plenty of time for that. But the coach's answer is, like we're a 3-14. We didn't do enough. It's our fault. This and that. GM says that it's really the owner. If the owner's okay with it, feels like they're on a track. He did admit, the owner, that that the coach and the GM won't talk about rebuilding or kind of not having high expectations. You could tell by Haslam that they feel like they are in a retooling, rebuilding because of a lot of it, because you're missing 3 first-round picks and a couple second-round picks that probably should be, if not starters, significant contributors on this team. And you add 5 type players like that to this team would be a lot better than it is. But the roster a year ago, a lot of us thought it was one of the best rosters we'd ever seen. Then they go 3-14. I don't know how you hold them accountable. I don't know. Do you just write every day, fire the coach? I mean, or if that's all we talked about here, we have no control over that. And if all the media just drum beat that every day, I don't know if they would say, yeah, we agree with you.
Yeah.
They feel good about where they're at. And I would think in the process of building a dome and everything and trying to get goodwill, your owner down would not only want a good product, but want the fans on board, feeling good about it. And it just seems to me like he said, until we get the quarterback, that's the transition. And he said 100% Kevin would be here through that process to find the quarterback, whether it's Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders or the guy they take in next year's draft?
Question from James Porsche about the offense. He asked, can Stefanski run a conventional under center offense with Gabriel's height restrictions? If I remember, Gabriel was in the shotgun a whole lot in college.
Yeah, most of the kids in college now are in shotgun, and so that's the transition. I mean, Sanders really didn't get under center, and Gabriel didn't either too much. He said he played a lot of play action when he was at Central Florida his first year, or I don't know about Oklahoma or wherever he was second, but he's played a lot of games. They want to do play action. He's done play action. So we'll see. I don't know if it'll be successful. I think that it comes down to the running game. If the running game's successful, I think they can get away with, play action pass and going from under center. But I do think Gabriel's more of a shotgun guy, as well as what I see from Sanders.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to another question from E. Gillen. So, do you guys think Haslam intimated that Barry and Stefanski have lots of leeway this year because of the lack of draft prospects with Watson? Interesting question, Fred. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think he likes them paired. I think that he doesn't want to go through this again. He feels like he mentioned their ages, a 38 and 42-year-old. He really envisions them being together for a long time. And I don't know what's going to dissuade him from that. You can point a lot of good moves and you can point a lot of bad moves. The Watson one, is really what's hung over this organization since they made the trade. And I think Haslam has bought or taken the heat that it was his decision to okay it. And so he's not going to fire them because they don't have draft picks. They don't have, everything. Even though I don't think he brought the idea to them, I think that it was the other way around. Barry went to him. If you remember, Watson turned him down. There was down to 3 teams. He made a call, got back in. They said, what would it take? And they told him. I can't imagine that the Texans or Watson's camp said, you got more than 30 minutes to make a decision. And they went right to Haslam and said, this is the deal. Yes or no? And he signed off. So that's why they are where they are. And I think he feels responsible for signing off on it or whatever, and took ownership of it, so to say, and doesn't feel it's fair to fire these guys, especially going into, a big year to see what you have with Gabriel and Sanders. One or both of them could feel real good about long-term and maybe not even draft one next year, but they could get to the draft next year and use their pick or the Jacksonville pick and take another quarterback to be the perceived franchise back. And you have a quarterback room of those 3, the 2 rookies from this year and next year's rookie.
As long as this is the last OBR Weekly, I ought to just dive off the deep end here. Haslam also mentioned their ages, right? 38 and 42, I believe. And it takes me back to 1994. That's how old I am. When Bill Belichick was running the Cleveland Browns, and he was a young guy back then, in his 30s. He was smart. He worked hard. He learned a lot. And he took those learnings and went off and created a dynasty over in New England. I was saying at the time that I thought the Browns were making a mistake if they got rid of Belichick. I can see sort of an analogous situation here where you have 2 relatively young, bright, hardworking guys who've learned a lot. And if you let them go, they'll just go elsewhere and take advantage of everything they learned, from their failures here in Cleveland. And
exactly. Exactly. I mean, Stefanski's got 2 NFL Coach of the Year, and he's kind of done some of his best work when they had obstacles like COVID, or injured quarterbacks, and so I think these guys don't lose it overnight. That's why I say, I point to some draft mistakes with Barry. He hasn't done very well in it, but right now this looks like maybe his best draft. I would have liked to had Hunter, but I can't argue with picking up a first round pick. If Jacksonville goes 5-12 or 3-14, and you get a top 5 pick out of that, you're in pretty good shape and not even using your own. But I agree. I think that they've learned on the job. They've learned from their mistakes, and that's all you can hope is get better and better. I agree with you. I would have never thought Bill Belichick would go anywhere and be successful when he was here, because he was just so stubborn and he did everything himself. He tried to do the drafting himself. He had Mike Lombardi, but he basically told him who he wanted. His drafts were pretty terrible. I'll tell you how far I went. He wrote me a personal letter one time, and I don't think I would have thrown it away, but I can't find it. So I might have thrown it away. That's how much I thought of him, thinking if I had that letter, it was 8.5 by 11, handwritten. He printed in red ink, explaining to me why they didn't have room for me to get on the team plane, because Casey Coleman wanted me to be the statistician. And I'm like, if the head coach of the Browns has taken 5 or 10 minutes to write a note like this, he's not delegating any authority. He learned how to do all that. Yes, I'm not saying Barry and these guys are doing, but I agree. They're bright. They know what they're doing. They just have to get better and make the right calls at the right time. And it starts with getting the right quarterback.
Yeah. Dennis sort of makes that point. Belichick without Brady, not real impressive. We don't know really who's responsible for all those Super Bowls he won down there.
Well, I don't think
the combination was magical, clearly.
They might not have won 6 Super Bowls without Brady, but I think they would have been a lot better. They had Bledsoe. They were winning, when they made the change.
Well, Tommy sure carried Belichick a little bit, and we don't know how much of the opposite was true as well. But obviously, the two of them, you can't argue with the success. So MC Lawrence asks a hypothetical question here. He says, if someone offered a 3rd or a 4th for Sanders, do you think Andrew Berry pulls the trigger on?
Well, I can't imagine him going that high, but he was there in the draft, but he might. It just depends on how highly they think of Gabriel and how highly they think of Pickett. If they think Gabriel's close to Pickett, then they keep Sanders and Gabriel and see what they have, during the year. They were really high on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He was a 5th round pick, largely because he played well in those preseason games. So I don't know. I mean, it comes down to the decision, what they think. You know, what people don't understand is you got 2 rookies on rookie contracts for 4 years at a very bargain. They're under $1 million. That's gold of the quarterback. Even Pickett's like at 2.6 million guaranteed. So Gabriel and Sanders together don't make as much as Pickett does. So yeah, I mean, like I really think they're going to be on the team this year. And that's why I said they'll keep all 4. If they can trade anybody, it would be Pickett. But I've been wrong before.
They're the freaking Cleveland Browns. They've been looking for a quarterback for 25 years. If Shedeur Sanders has a 10% chance of becoming a franchise quarterback, they'll hold on to him. I
mean, I think that in the making, it could be a very big black eye, not only with the Judkins, but the guy with Nick Chubb getting cut from what I hear, it seems like in Texans now he's their starting running back because Mixon's
Mm-hmm.
hurt. That's all you need is him to go Saquon Barkley this year and say, you let him go for 1.5 million for a guy
Oh,
who's illegal, so
yeah. Yeah. There was supposedly a quote from D'Amico Ryan sort of talking about Chubb getting older or something, but I haven't seen it verified. They seem to be viewing him as the number one running back and waiting to see what they get with Mixon out. And obviously, that would be a worst case scenario for our GM to have that happen. Let's go to one more question from Jeff Tucker. He says, "How about the backup receivers? Will the young guys make the team?" So we've got some young kids, Luke Floria and Gage Lavardian, who have looked pretty good out there. Fred, you think they've got a shot or not?
Yeah, they've been showing up. Cade McDonald, Luke Floria, Caden Davis made a great play today. He's kick returner. Gage Lavardane. I think they're mostly battling for practice squad, but now with Woods gone, they'll probably keep 5 or 6 wide receivers. I think Jamari Thrash made a couple plays today. I haven't seen David Bell, so I think I haven't seen any of them guys, out on the field or anything. So I think his days might be numbered. So you have clearly what I'm seeing right now is Judy and Tillman and Deontay Johnson showing up. If he continues, those would be the top 3 with Thrash 4. And then you got some openings. Depends off the count. DeAndre Carter is a wide receiver or kick returner. He's 32. They brought him in to return kicks, but Caden Davis is playing very well as a wide receiver. And if you remember last year, they signed him for the final game, and he was the kick returner. He had like the longest kick return average. He had 3 returns for like 120 yards. He averaged like 40 yards a return. And so I think he's got a real shot to make the practice squad, if not the roster. Right now, I would say he would have the best chance. I haven't done the numbers, but I think he's definitely practice squad. And then it's how they think of Lavardane and Florian, Cassine Johnson. There's a lot of undrafted guys that are all kind of, in a clump. I mean, I've never seen so many wide receivers. They signed a lot of them because they were with the 4 quarterbacks, but with Bell not practicing and Woods getting released, it increases their chances. And I think they usually have 2 or 3 at least on the practice squad. So that's what I think they're battling for.
Now, Floria's running back some punts, isn't he? Or some kicks?
A lot of those guys they have 4 or 5, 6 guys on punts and kicks. So again, the key is DeAndre Carter. Do they see him? They like him. He's 32. Do you keep him just to pretty much be your specialist? Do you think he's that much better than letting go of some young guy? Because, this is the first year, at least till now, they have a specialist that's still around. I mean, JoJo Natson, tore his ACL. Jakeem Grant 2 years in a row, ACL, Achilles, and then Naeem Hines last year. So 4 years they tried to have a specialist, never played. And so Carter's that guy this year so far. He's been out making some plays at receiver. So we'll just see when it comes to decisions, how highly they think of the younger guys.
All right. Well, we are getting close to wrapping up here. Dennis, obviously a proficient liar, as he has complimented us here. We know that can't be true, but thanks for saying it. And Fumble 13 says, it says the last OBR weekly. Say it ain't so. I don't have to talk to my wife. Well, you're out of luck, Fumble, because you got to talk to her next Wednesday night because we will not be on the air. But the week after that, Fred returns on a brand new show that we're really excited about. And make sure that you tune in on August 13th to see the debut of the new show. with a new host who actually does homework, I think.
Special guests already lined up.
Right. We got guests lined up. It's gonna be pretty amazing. All right. Thank you so much for watching us, not only tonight, but over the years as we come out here and do this. I've been able to get away with my lack of preparation because of all the great questions in the chat and all the great comments in the chat. So thank you for watching this show. Thank you, Legend, for offering your wisdom. And I usually say we're going to be back next week. We aren't, but I think you'll be excited with what we have a couple Wednesdays from now. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. See you.